The Thunder took care of business in Washington, just absolutely throttling the Washington Wizards. SGA joins an exclusive club, but other than that, not much from this game. We'll diagnose it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're talking Thunder clobbering Wizards. We're talking Shai in the 10,000-point club. We're talking Cason Wallace with his shooting turnaround, Wiggins off the bench, and even the NBA trade deadline with Brandon Rahbar at Brandon Rahbar on Twitter, 1077 The Franchise, KREF, DailyThunder.com, and OKC Dream Team, where him and I get on there for even more Thunder talk. Brandon, how you feeling after this one?
I feel like this is my big takeaway, Rylan, and tell me if I'm way off base here, if this is a hot take. I think the Thunder are better than the Wizards.
I mean, I'm glad that someone was bold enough to say it. It's really going far out on a limb. But this was a game in which the Thunder just separated themselves early and often from Washington, a game that was over before it started. And the rare, 40-point win that there's not even a ton to overreact to. Like, if Isaiah Joe had his Friday night game on Sunday night, we would be spending all day long talking about Isaiah Joe and the potential for his turnaround for the shot and for the shooting and for the scoring. And instead, nothing even really is out of the ordinary in the Thunder's box score. They've been consistently a great team. All these numbers check out. And against Washington, it leads to just an absolute domination in the nation's capital. Now, lucky for Washington, they can cling to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, who got a big win on Sunday night, which I don't know why this game didn't get the same treatment that last year when the Thunder went and played Detroit. And again, that they lost, that game got moved to noon because of the Lions that they were playing on the road, just like the Commanders were against San Francisco. Now, that was a NFC title game. I grant you that. But this was still if you're trying to sell tickets for a losing club, you can't compete with an NFL playoff game. You've got to try to get your fans and sell them on, hey, come watch the game, cheaper tickets for a tanking team. You're already now kind of in the mix of everything, in this district area. You can go watch the Commanders afterward with your fellow fans. And they just left it at a 6 o'clock local start, 5 o'clock our time start. That was a little bit peculiar. But this game, Brandon, how I knew it was over was whenever Chris Fisher started talking about warm-ups and started talking about cageisms, because Chris Fisher, he is the ultimate professional. He is a textbook broadcaster. He does everything by the book. He's so good. And he always keeps the car on the road, to use a Markism, with this broadcast, because there's a lot of moving parts. Cage is always trying to sneak something in, and he is the steady hand on the wheel. And when he started leaning into stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, this game is cooked.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Or when they start talking about 90s movie references and kind of go on a tangent about, oh, you haven't seen that movie? And Cage is dumbfounded and Fisher's like, no, I haven't seen that movie. We didn't get that this time, but I always enjoy those rants. Another way I knew this game was cooked was when they showed Wizards fans and they had their tablets out watching the Commanders.
Pregame game.
Football game. Yeah. I tell you who did buy tickets tonight, though, were Thunder fans. Apparently there was as many OKC fans in attendance tonight as there were Wizards fans, which for good reasons. The Thunder just outclassed the Wizards. Obviously, it was cool to see OKC chants break out on the road at the end of the game. SGA got MVP chants, but
From
you're
the
right.
First whistle.
What's that?
From the first whistle. It's not even like he impressed the road crowd and got them. They were just right away, which leads you even more to believe them whenever they say that there was a ton of Thunder fans there.
Yeah, you're right. Because sometimes it's one of those deals, you kind of blow the home crowd away. Like, okay, this dude just went for 50. He's been super impressive. Let's give him some MVP chance. He's earned it. He deserves it. But no, it's like from the jump, because there were Thunder fans in the building. Thunder fans didn't care about the Commanders football game, so they were there to watch SGA and J-Dub. But yeah, it's funny because in a 41-point win, you go through the box score, like SGA dropped his points per game tonight. He didn't get to play the fourth quarter. It was the 8th time this year, Rylan, where SGA didn't get to play in the fourth quarter. And it's kind of hurting his stats, quite honestly. Like, he had the scoring lead going into the game because both Giannis and Jokic had down scoring days today earlier. But then SGA didn't get to play the fourth quarter, so he didn't get his 30 points tonight. J-Dub didn't get to play the fourth quarter. And, of course, he leaves early in the third quarter because he plays at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He only played 21 minutes tonight. He still got 17. I think the only thing that really sticks out in the box score is two things. There were 7 players in double digits. That's cool. Like, rare to see 7 players in double digits because of the balance scoring. Aaron Wiggins had 23 points. It was his season high. But even that was like not an asterisk, but he got a lot of that like after the game was already decided. Like, Wiggins was really good. And he earned like player of the game from Chris and Cage earned it. But, you know, just nothing. I guess Alex Dukas scored his first career points. Like,
and it led to a rare Shai technical.
Yeah. Do you think they'll rescind that? Like, because technically it should be a technical because he was on the court, but he immediately felt bad. Like, he said my bad, I think like 9 times in a row.
Yeah.
And he was jumping up for a teammate scoring his first career points. Like, do you rescind that? Or do you make the dude pay $15,000 for that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can rescind it because it's literally the rule. Because like Lou Dort had a tech rescinded, but the replay showed he was not, he was not doing what they thought he was doing whenever they gave him the tech at that NBA Cup game against Houston. It's like he was found not guilty, whereas like Shai in a court of law would be found guilty of the technical foul. Now you can argue if the law should be there. There's been many laws, mainly some with grass, that you can argue about throughout human history. But the law is the law, and he did commit a crime here with the technical foul. So I don't think that it will be rescinded. I think that it will be one where, like, when the Thunder talk about getting fined and talk about technical fouls, like, they don't. This is an excusable one. Yes, you should have like known and had awareness of like you were on the court, but he didn't do it with any sort of like malice intent or like even like. It wasn't like a situation where it was taunting even. He was literally just excited. Like, if Wiggins hits that shot, he's not going to rub it in the Wizards' face and like get on the court. He was doing it because it was Dukas' first ever point, which the Thunder have done before. Like, whenever Reese scored his first point, oh my goodness. Like, they brought him into the Nick Gallo interview. They brought him to the podium. They wrestled the ball away, and I believe this was the game where they stole it from Cason's brother, who also had his first point. Like, they did everything for Alex Reese, who was here for a small cup of coffee. And so, like, I just think that like that's what this team is. It's this team's identity, and it is a tech, and it does kind of rain on the parade of the celebration, but it's a tech.
Yeah. And you know what? Alex Dukas has a really cool story for his like grandkids when he's like telling them how when he scored his first NBA career points, he's like, and the MVP of that season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, was so excited. He jumped off the bench and he got a technical foul because I scored my first points. Pretty cool story for Alex.
Especially for a guy who's not like, he's not going to have that many techs at the end of his career. Like, he's not Draymond Green. Like, I would guess that given the track record that Shai has and the path he's on, he will end up with techs that's like a handful that you can like remember why he got teed up for every single one of them. And you're going to remember why he got teed up for this one against Washington in the blowout. And it's going to be because of Alex Dukas and because of his first ever shot that he made in this game. I thought that Cason Wallace was really good tonight. And I know it's tough to like crown someone over one game, but it's not just one game. 2 things about Wallace stood out. Number 1, 2 for 3 from 3. And if you look at the Thunder's last 12 games and Wallace's last 12 games, he's shooting 40% from 3. Like, that's what he shot last year. And he's only on the season shooting like 32% from 3. It's a far cry from the 22% he started at. But you're seeing his 3-point shot uptick overall. Last 12 games, he's back to where he was a year ago. And I just think that that's a massive sign for the Thunder's offense. I don't know that like he'll ever shoot 40% again the way he did as a rookie, but he certainly is not as bad as what his overall average suggests. And finding that leveling off ground will be huge for the Thunder's offense. And the fact that he's on such a hot streak right now, I think does correlate with these wins.
Yeah, and I really like seeing his overall season average from 3 now up to 33%. So it keeps ticking up. Also, a really good sign that he's shooting this well on the road. This is 3 games in a row. He went 2 of 3 tonight. He went 1 of 2 versus the Knicks, and he went 3 of 3 versus the Cavs. He was really good against the Cavs. So, I mean, the last 3 games, all on the road, shot really well. He scored in double digits 3 out of the last 4 games. So, Cason has been so good all season long defensively. Like, he's a top 5 or 6 guy in the league in steals per game. And it's not just that. It's his point of attack, his perimeter defense. He's been suffocating. He's been incredibly important, taking on an even bigger role, I think, than anticipated with Alex Caruso missing so much time. This defense is predicated so much on that smothering, suffocating perimeter defense, and Cason's been a big part of that. So it's really nice to see the other side, the offensive side, coming around for Cason as well. And, I think he's a big part of this whole Thunder puzzle moving forward. Obviously, he played a big piece as a rookie, and still, so far this season, he's averaging over 27 minutes per game. That's a big piece of this puzzle, and he's on that rookie contract. So seeing his offense coming around, I think is very promising for this Thunder team.
Yeah, it's huge for this Thunder team, and I'm going to tell you why I think that he's won the starting job coming up. But first, I want to say right now, about our good friends over at Ultimate GM, because they have a great game. I want to take a moment to introduce you to the new mobile game. I'm really excited about Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach and have a chance to step into those shoes, you have it now with Ultimate College Basketball HC. You control every detail of your program, from the recruiting players to hiring college staffs to overseeing training camps to handling NIL deals and managing scholarships, all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you can draw up offensive plays, set your strategy the way you want to, and the way you play will impact your current season, but also the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be the head coach and lead your team to glory. So here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Just go download Ultimate College Basketball HC by either visiting ultimate-cbb.com or looking up in the App Store, Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Also want to say right now, my good friends over at Game Time, go check out Game Time today, because Game Time is great. I love Game Time. Some of the favorite memories that you have is going to live events. And for me, that was minor league baseball, spending every summer up there watching the OKC Red Hawks back in my day. That's what they were called. And you can have those favorite memories again with Game Time, because now Game Time gets you tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff and only shows you the good deals. Instead of having to scour through a seating map of thousands of tickets, you're not going to waste your time searching those dots. You're going to get thousands of great deals instead with the Game Time Picks feature. And I also love the fact that you can toggle in all-in pricing, see exactly what you're going to pay before you buy, and they have a view from your seat, so you get exactly the sight lines of your seat. If you've never been to that venue before but really want to go to that event, go check it out today and take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time by downloading the Game Time app, creating your account, and using code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast. On the Locked On Podcast Network, I'm Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Check out Thunder on SI. That's Brandon Rahbar. At Brandon Rahbar on Twitter. Check out Daily Thunder. And Brandon, the Thunder dominate the Wizards in this one. Number one, I think that Cason Wallace has won the starting job. Earlier in the year, Mark was flipping through. It was Wallace, it was Joe, it was Wiggins, then back to Wallace, Joe, Wiggins. And he kind of went through a starting pitching rotation almost of who's going to start each night. And now it's been pretty consistently Cason Wallace. And I think that one of those reasons is on top of the shooting turn we just discussed, on top of his tone-setting defense, he's seeing the floor so well off the ball that he's able to find open space to manipulate a defense where you have the gravity of Shai, of J-Dub, and the passing of Hartenstein, to where it's almost like, running a route against zone defense where you find grass and sit down like an option route. Like that's what he's doing. His cutting is really good, but it's not the explosiveness that you visualize when you think of the word cut. Like he's just kind of floating to the dunker spot, floating to the elbow, getting where the defense isn't and getting rewarded for it, where he's able to clean up some possessions and help you get some easy points. And that's a very big skill, especially playing off those guys. Whereas like Isaiah Joe, for example, I think that as a rhythm shooter, you more so need to create touches for him early and often to get him in a groove, which they did a great job of in New York. And it's hard to replicate that in a lineup where Shai will take a ton of shots. We know J-Dub needs to control the offense. Hartenstein in the high post controls the offense. And then Lou Dort's not afraid to shoot it either. So pushing him down the pecking order of the starting five, I think, is why you see Isaiah Joe's splits being so off in terms of when he's on the bench, he's a lot better than whenever he's in the starting five. Whereas Cason benefits from all that extra stuff, from being the fifth guy, so to say, on the shot chart. But do you think that Cason, as these numbers bear out, that Cason is the best option in the starting five?
I do. And, we've seen Cason get the starting, gig for quite a while now. Aaron Wiggins got it on his birthday. Isaiah Joe's birthday isn't until July. So, he's not going to get like the birthday bump.
That's always tough when your birthday's in the summer months, right? I mean, you don't get the class party. You don't get the mark start.
Yeah. You kind of get ripped off. Like I remember like in school.
He should go to summer league.
He should. He would get a starting gig. It's summer league. He would start every game in summer league, I think. If not, there's a problem. I think that Cason, first of all, like you're exactly right. Like his basketball IQ, like just like knowing where to be on offense, like kind of like the soft spots, like you're saying, he's still only 21 years old. Like his basketball IQ is something that the Thunder talked about when they drafted him. And it's kind of jumped off the screen ever since, he's been in a Thunder uniform. Just really impressed with Cason. I am curious once Chet comes back. I know Caruso is going to come back. I think that we can agree that Caruso is not going to be in the starting lineup. He hasn't been in the starting lineup all season. You could debate whether that last starting spot will be liquid, and maybe sometimes they'll start double bigs in some matchups. Maybe sometimes they'll still go to Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins in certain matchups. But it does feel like Cason Wallace has kind of locked that down, at least for now. We'll see what happens when Chet comes back.
Yeah, we will. And that'll be a conversation we'll have many a times leading up to Chet's return. But Brandon, SGA did score his 10,000th point of his career. And that's awesome that he was able to get that milestone. Obviously, not all of those points have been with the Thunder. The Thunder, since they only have, they only acknowledge Oklahoma City history. They don't acknowledge Seattle history. They only have two members of the 10,000 point club. 9,111 of those points are with OKC. So he needs, 889 more points to join Westbrook and Durant in the Thunder's 10,000 point club. We both think clearly he's going to do that. He's going to join that club. And I just think that this milestone speaks to like how cool it is that Shai is going to be leading this next wave as a guy who's going to be in your record books. He's going to be, he's going to sign that max extension, the super max, getting paid $80 million a year, the first ever player to have that milestone, and be a guy that you can get behind. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot here, the same way that Joe Mazzato put me on the spot on Dream Team. Where does he finish in terms of Thunder points whenever his tenure is over in Oklahoma City? Over or under just Kevin Durant? Like, we'll worry about Russ Westbrook later, but like, does he pass Kevin Durant? Which is basically just as he play an extra season or two than Kevin Durant did.
Yes. And here's why. I think that SGA is here for the long haul. He just spoke about it a couple of nights ago. He was asked about, small markets and whether it was important for superstars to be in big markets or small markets. And I'm sure by now everybody's heard the sound clip, where he said that, I love Oklahoma City. I can't imagine being anywhere else other than Oklahoma City. And I believe Shai. And, this team is built to last. This team is built to win, to be a sustainable contender for many years to come. Like you said, that upcoming Supermax, he will, have the biggest contract in NBA history. So, given health, I think that Shai's going to be here and he's going to put up a lot of points, I mean, this is, he's leading the league in 30-point games this season. He led the league in 30-point games the last season. So over the last few seasons, he's leading the league in 30-point games. That's just what he does. He's so efficient. I think he's going to pass KD.
Yeah, that's the same answer I had. I think that too, on top of the relationship that he speaks about with the organization this week, he's also spoke highly of his relationship with Sam. And I think that the Thunder are just better equipped to handle this rise and to handle like the long-term management of a superstar now than they possibly were back then, just because they have the assets to. And I think that people like think of this asset pile as like going all in and getting somebody else. I don't think that that's what they're going to do. I think that they'll make another trade this summer where they take one of these picks this year that they have multiple and kick it to 2032. And like you're thinking to yourself, well, why do you keep kicking it down the road? Well, it's the NBA. Like drama is around the corner, no matter how tight the group is, no matter how awesome the team is, drama is going to find you at some point. And when that time comes, the Thunder will be prepared to navigate it. They'll be prepared to recover from it. They'll be prepared to get out of jail free and appease their superstar and work together to continue to not just blindly like appease Shai, but to continue to win and continue to build a roster around him with these picks that they keep kicking down the road. So whenever they go make those trades with Denver where the draft pick's not to 2031 and you're thinking it's way too far out, like that day's going to come eventually, and those resources are going to be used to continue this relationship and this partnership with Shai, to where on top of the money, on top of being the face of one of 30 franchises, on top of what Shai himself speaks about, you're also in a position basketball-wise to continue to win with Shai, no matter how everything else shakes out. And more importantly than all of that, if drama never finds you, you've still positioned yourself the best that you possibly can to retain those key guys of Shai, J-Dub, and Chet. And then if you do that, which I think that they will, frankly, if you retain those three guys, which we all believe that they will, now those draft picks can still be used in a more impactful way than just pushing them all in for somebody by drafting supplemental players, getting them on cheap contracts, allowing you to keep those top three guys. So to answer the question flatly, I think he will be here longer than Kevin Durant. I think he's a shot to be here longer than Russ if all goes according to plan. And that's just going to naturally lead to him climbing these record books for OKC for a franchise that only counts their history to 2008. And here in a couple of years, they won't have to worry about the whole history thing because they'll return it to Seattle, and this will be truly a new franchise in the NBA. So I think it's great from that standpoint. I think that it'll be even better when it's from a Thunder standpoint than just an NBA standpoint. But hats off to Shai. I know that he was a lottery pick, but man, how many lottery picks do you see don't even sniff 1,000 points, like much less 10,000? And it's like, this is still a pretty big deal.
Yeah, like not only was he, he was the 11th pick. Like, that's like a crapshoot kind of like, that's kind of considered like, that could be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or that could be, James Bouknight. Like, no, I don't mean for James Bouknight to be catching any strays right here, but what'd you say?
Thunder legend, Kevin. James Bouknight.
Yeah, it could be Josh Primo. Like, you don't know, like at that point, like who you're getting. But now, if you listen to Jerry West, if you heard those guys talk about Shai, they were very, very high on Shai, and obviously. Sam Presti and the OKC organization was very high on Shai. And obviously Shai, his rookie year, flashed a lot of the potential of what he could become that rookie season and became a really, really good player from the jump for a surprising Clippers team that year. Another great thing about Shai is that I think that his game will age really well. How he scores his points. Obviously, he's a 3-level scorer. He doesn't really rely on, athleticism, in a lot of ways. Like, obviously he's very quick. He's very fast, all those things. I think his athleticism is underrated, actually, now that we're talking about it. But
his ability to stop on a dime and stuff like that will eventually deteriorate, but not for a long, long, long time. It's not as though he needs to jump out of the gym to go get a bucket. Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that Shai will be able to get these buckets for many, many years to come. So yeah, It's and like you said, I think a big part of this, as long as the Thunder keep Shai, Chet, and J-Dub together, and that is what's going to happen. I mean, they're going to keep these three. That is the core. That is who they're building around. Those three together. I mean, you've got a contender for years and years, and Shai's the head of that.
We have our closing thoughts on this Washington game, plus NBA trade deadline talk coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the number one business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcriptions and, of course, summaries, so you'll have a rundown of these calls and action items the second that you hang up. If you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customers, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. And right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off you for 6 months. Go check it out today at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing number with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra cost. Brandon, we've talked this Wizards game. Shout out Jay Will. I thought he had a really good game, especially as a connective passer in this one. Letting the Thunder play to their identity with the starters and the reserves was huge. Playing off, of course, Hartenstein, who is a playmaking hub in the starting group. But ultimately, we've kind of hit it. There's not a ton from this. Credit to the Thunder. This is what great teams do. They beat down the Wizards and get on with their life because there's some other teams that cannot say the same. Believe it or not, the Wizards have won games this year, albeit seldomly. But I do want to talk NBA trade deadline. Everybody's itching for trade deadline content. And Brandon, you just tell me if I'm way off base here. You've been around this league. You've covered it longer than I have. When I think back to what Sam Presti talked about it being difficult to integrate players at the deadline, I think it's even more difficult to do that on a team in which you have a loaded roster already, but more importantly, you play a unique style of basketball on both ends of the floor. Like this offense of everybody's live with the basketball in their hands. You're constantly moving. Like that is unique. That is not what you see in every single market and every single organization. Defensively, you're switching everything. It's controlled chaos. You've got to understand, like you can't just it's not recklessness. Like there is a plan to it, but it is chaotic. And that's way different than just, matching up man for man and going about your day. So that's really tough to figure out on the fly. And whenever you make a deal, it's not like you have a trade deadline to ramp anybody up or get anyone accustomed to it. And your role is going to completely change. No matter how good you are, no matter who they trade for, your role completely changes from where it was in some way or another. And it could be massively beneficial. It could also be not what you were really bargaining for, and then you just outright quit, which is what Gordon Hayward appeared to do on the court last year when he was passing up shots and just refusing to shoot open corner threes. He just looked like he quit on the court. Silent quitting, if you will, which is the new trend, or old trend, I guess, by now. But on top of that, so even if you don't agree with that, I can grant you that it is possible, and the Thunder could do that. But you're also already integrating your second best player on this roster around the trade deadline. After the trade deadline, around the All-Star break, I think March, but perhaps February 22nd, 23rd, 24th, whatever. You're eventually here, you're going to be integrating your second best player. Now, I can already hear you typing away. He's already played 82 games last year. He's played 10 games this year. He's never played a single minute in the regular season with Isaiah Hartenstein. And that's a massive difference from what he's used to. He's never played before or after a traditional center. He's never played with a traditional center. It is entirely different of how the Thunder want to structure their rotation, how they want to structure their lineups and starting lineups and closing lineups. Everything about this is unique and different and really going to take time on a tiny window of time, by the way, between the deadline and really for Chet, March, and the start of the playoffs. It's a very finite amount of time that you have to get that right and ready for the playoffs. Why would you just willingly throw in another obstacle, another challenge in the mix for a team that through all this adversity, through all not having Chet for most of the year, through Caruso at this point not being there for most of the year, they're 32-6 still after all of that. 32-6. I think that you've got to, for this season, I'm not talking about every deadline, I'm not talking about the offseason, but for this season, let the chips fall where they may. Go see what this team can do. And I think that this team, as they've shown you all year, is a title contender, is a team that is capable of winning a championship, but only 1 out of 30 get to do it. So not doing it would not be a total indictment on them, but they're capable of winning. You get a runway of 2 months with Chet and then the playoffs with Chet and Hartenstein to then evaluate where you're at, where your deficiencies were, and then you can make a move in the offseason if you feel you need to, and have a whole offseason training camp and 82-game season to adjust and to bring that player in. Whereas bringing that player in right now, it just creates some unnecessary headaches for a team that's already a title team.
Yeah, so it's not just the talent. I mean, obviously, the Thunder are incredibly talented, and they could add more talent. Yes, they have all these assets. They have all these draft picks. They can go out and get, whichever player that they targeted and would want and all those things. But it's also a chemistry thing. It's a cohesiveness. This team, has played together. Number 1 in the West last season, number 1 in the West this season, and they are going to add the best trade deadline addition in the NBA, and that is going to be Chet Holmgren. Like, nobody else is adding a player of Chet's caliber at the trade deadline, especially not a team that's number 1 in the West with this big of a cushion at number 1 in the West. You're also at some point soon adding Alex Caruso back to the mix. Like you said, just figure this team, everybody knows their role. Everybody plays their role within the team. And if you add a guy who's averaging 20 points a game, okay, well, then how does he fit into this puzzle? And then all of a sudden, how does that shift everybody else's role? And this well-oiled machine where everybody knows their role and is number 1 in the West and has been dominant all season long, you do throw a kink into that. And you have to figure something out. Like you said, not only do you have to adjust the team to figure out Chet and Hartenstein, but you have to figure out this other new player. So I'm with you. I agree. I think this team has the pieces to go out and win a championship. I mean, this team, without Caruso and without Chet, just beat the defending champion Celtics. This team just won 15 in a row. This team was neck and neck with the Cleveland Cavaliers, on the road till the very end, kind of a wire-to-wire coin flip game. We'll see what happens in the rematch this Thursday night in OKC. But they've done all this without Chet and without Caruso. And, by the way, without Hartenstein for the first 15, 20 games of the season as well. So we have not seen this team at full strength once this season. Sam Presti, just as a reminder, said, at the beginning of this season, before the season started, that, their big acquisitions they got in the offseason. They went out and they got Caruso. They went out and they got Hartenstein. They added these 2 guys to the mix. Like you said, they went out and got Gordon Hayward last year, and he felt like he kind of learned something from that, like integrating a player into a team that's already playing so well. It really can, cause some more hiccups than solve issues. So if you've got a team this good, this dominant, and you're going to add Chet Caruso, I mean, do you need to go out and get another guy? I don't know. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you, Rylan.
Yeah, and I hear you. On paper, Cam Johnson, that's the name that you're going to be typing in the comment section. He's an awesome player, and I think that if they made that move, he could fit with the Thunder. But we're saying if a lot. Like, we're saying if a lot on that scenario. Whereas we know that there is a combination where Chet is going to fit and work and be awesome. Now, when I say that, as we know, while also saying that there's a lot to figure out. Worst comes to worst, you can just play Chet with last year's lineups and then use Hartenstein in the J-Will role from last year, and you've now blanketed the game in 48 minutes of rim protection. You've blanketed the game in 48 minutes of a center that you couldn't do last year, and you still are improved. Best come to best, you're now tinkering with ways to get those 2 on the floor at the same time, to close games super big and match up with teams in versatile lineups, etc. That's the stuff you got to work on. But you for sure going to add in the best player at the deadline. And that's more of a baseball philosophy of, like, if a guy gets injured early in the year, you view him as a trade deadline acquisition. But that's really what it is for a team that's been able to be this good without him and are going to be better with him. I think he's their second best player. So I just would hesitate to do anything at the deadline, especially like anything that's even remotely marginal, because what would even really be the point if it presents you any obstacle for such a group that is so close, that is so family oriented, if you will, while getting the results. It's not some Kumbaya story that's just not playing well. They won 57 games last year. You made big moves last year. Like, you made big moves. You signed the largest free agent in team history, and you swapped out your very worst player in terms of fit for a guy who on paper does everything you were ever needing a year ago. So I just think that every time the deadline comes around, it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? And it's like, we got to go do something. When in reality, the Thunder have done their moves. Like, they did their stuff. Like, they did what they had to do this offseason. And now you haven't gotten to see the fruits of your labor yet. And so it feels like it's the same thing, right? Like, I guarantee you there's people out there who like watch that Cavs game and say, like, the Thunder just need more size. Like, they've done that. They've gotten more size. You've got to let them actually utilize the size that they've gotten. And the table setting stuff I think is interesting because you lost AJ for 10 to 12 weeks with toe surgery. But Caruso, if he can get healthy and get on the floor, which I know he will, like, Caruso has done some of that in the past, of like a bench guard with the ball in his hands. It's all just so up in the air right now that I don't have confidence that you can make a move knowing what your weakness is right now. Because, like, if you watch that Cavs game, you'd say your weakness is like you need rebounding help. But once you have Chet and Hartenstein back, that's all of a sudden no longer your weakness. So now what's your weakness? Like, you just don't know until you can see this team actually play. And I think that you should give this team time to actually play. Like, we just talked about in the last segment how this is not a 1 year thing. This is a many, many, many years to come thing. So you're going to have chances to correct anything that pops up. Let it pop up. This is a team that right now, by stats, by eye test, by record, are tier 1, 1A, 1B title contenders. Let them be that, and let them go into the playoffs with that kind of in mind.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're going to go out and get a Cam Johnson, well, he makes over $20 million per year, so the Thunder do have a little bit of buffer, but you got to send salary out as well, and so all of a sudden you're like, is it Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins? Like, those are fan favorites. Not only that, but they've been really good on the court. There's a reason why those contracts that they signed were so celebrated, to get 2 role players like that for the long term on those team-friendly deals will pay dividends not only this season, but down the road. And we've seen these guys just this week. Like, Aaron Wiggins won that game against the Knicks last week, and then Isaiah Joe goes 8 for 11 from 3 against the Knicks this week. Like, so we've seen against good competition, both Joe and Wiggins, and we're talking about, like, obviously Cam Johnson is an elite shooter and he's 6'8". I get it, but Isaiah Joe has been an elite shooter throughout his career, and all of a sudden he's over 37% on the season, and this is a down year for him. And it's a season where, there should be more progression coming. And we've seen it in Aaron Wiggins. He's been over 40% for 2 seasons in a row. So you're giving up 2 shooters already to get this guy. Like, it's just, you'd also have to give up, like, I don't know, like, are you giving up Kenrich Williams? This team, like Kenrich Williams is like this culture. And, and I've seen like toe pitch discussions. Like, this guy was, considered a top 3 pick before he got hurt. Like, these are really good, young, long-term assets for this team.
Yeah, and I think that I get the shooting stuff. I really do. Like, they need to have reliable, good shooters. I will say that you mentioned Isaiah Joe's percentage is creeping up. In the last 12 games, Cason Wallace is shooting 40%. And I don't care if you think that Caruso's 40% last year was a fluke. For his whole career in the NBA, whether he's getting a ton of minutes or not a lot of minutes, he's shooting 37% from 3. That is way better than his percentage this year. Like, that's eventually going to climb up too. And so when those guys climb up in 3-point percentage, then all of a sudden you're looking at a whole new team in terms of 3-point percentage, not to mention what Chet will do from 3 whenever he's back. So maybe even the 3-point shot isn't the weakness that we think it is. We just do not know until we know. And I don't think that you can know right now until they're healthy. But Brandon, this was a lot of fun. This was somehow a super long episode, even though we're talking about a Wizards game that was nothing from the first quarter. But thank you for joining us. Go check him out at dailythunder.com and OKC Dream Team. Brandon, thanks again for joining us. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.